So welcome to St. John's International Women's Film Festival and Lawnya Vawnya present Fanny, The Right to Rock, directed by Bobbi Jo Hart. Bobbi Jo is an award-winning American-Canadian documentary filmmaker with Adobe Productions International based in Montreal, where she's joining us from today. Your career has spanned 25 years. You filmed in Pakistan, Russia, Australia, Guatemala, Scotland, Zimbabwe. And your newest film, Fanny, The Right to Rock, has just had its world premiere at Hot Docs this year. So exciting. Congratulations. Bobbi Jo Hart, welcome. It's great to meet you and great to have you here to talk about your amazing film.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here. The St. John's International Women's Film Festival has been a dream festival of mine for years to have a film be a part of. So it's a dream come true for me as well. So thank you. Thank you so much for selecting the film. And I'm thrilled to be here today. Thank you for inviting me.
Great. Well, I'm looking forward to talking to you more about Fanny. I loved Fanny, The Right to Rock. I loved the film so much. I watched it several times, once in the bathtub where I cried at the end of the film, like happy tears. It's an amazing, moving, portrait of this band. It's, I think, a really important film. And before we get to talking more about it, I just want to chat with you a little bit about your career as a documentary filmmaker. You've told stories, a lot of your films have told stories about so many amazing people and communities. I wondered, what is it about the documentary genre for you that is sort of unique or attracted you as a genre for telling stories? There's so many ways to tell stories out there. What is it for you that's kept you coming back to documentary for such an impressive, 25 years as a filmmaker?
Part of it is insanity. I think you have to be slightly off kilter to be in this genre because it's a real labor of love. You don't get into it for the money. You get into it for the passion, for the desire to help affect positive change in the world in some small way. My degree in university actually is in international studies. So I thought I was going to work for the Peace Corps or something like that. And I met a documentary filmmaker actually in Edmonton, Terry Winnick. Hi, Terry, who was my initial inspiration to go into become a documentary filmmaker. I was working at a college in Edmonton and in communications at the time. I had married a Canadian, moved to Canada from the States, but I'd always loved documenting life. Mm-hmm. I'll step back one second because in high school, in Cottage Grove, Oregon, a small town, I always loved taking pictures. I created a senior slideshow our last year and put it to music. But I never connected that to having a career in documentary filmmaking. So when I went off to college, it was business for 2 years. And then I was bored and said, okay, I need something more meaningful. So I gravitated into an interdisciplinary studies and created a degree in international studies, which was great. Southern Oregon State, thank you, in Ashland. And so when I ended up in Edmonton in this communications job, I had to hire a crew to help me create a promotional video to attract students to Alberta Vocational College in Edmonton. And so Terry Winnick was directing the video with her camera and sound person. And so in between takes of things, we were just chatting away. And I said, oh, is this what you do full time? And she says, oh, no, as a documentary filmmaker, you always have to take on side work, to be able to keep going and afford to make your film. Mm-hmm. So I said, well, what are you normally doing? She says, well, I'm a documentary filmmaker. And she started talking about the stories she was making about women and causes and First Nations. And my eyes just, it was, as Oprah would say, that aha moment, mm-hmm. where I just thought, oh my gosh, yes, that's makes sense to me. For some reason, it just completely clicked with me. And so I took a bit of a path for a few years to get there. I jumped from what I was doing into unit publicity, because that was my transferable skills, and worked on film sets in Alberta for several years, TV series, documentaries as well, doing unit publicity and release publicity. And then I took a leap of faith at one point, and I, was at Banff TV Festival, and there was a big panel, and I was standing up asking questions of different filmmakers on stage. And one of them was Robert Duncan, who's from the West Coast, a very established filmmaker. And afterwards, I went up to him and he said, well, you were very persistent in your questions. I said, well, I want to do what you're doing. So how do I get there? And he said, well, you should probably, given what your background and publicity and this and that, he says, I think you should be, do some research for documentary, assistant director. And I said, okay, well, hire me. So he did. And so my first kind of gig in documentary was as his assistant director, researcher, production coordinator on a documentary about the life of wonderful author Ray Bradbury.
Oh, wow.
So I got to meet Ray Bradbury, hang out with him in Los Angeles and Paris, and we became very close. His wife and he and I, and we stayed very close until he passed away. Just a very beautiful human being. Mm-hmm. But that film really got me, that process was the beginning of kind of bringing together different worlds of my curiosity about the world. I think that's where my degree in international studies came from, of my curiosity about our shared humanity and my passion to build bridges of understanding between languages, cultures, ways of life, that we are one big community, I truly believe. And so filmmaking and documentary filmmaking attracted me because it allowed me to really experience the world, to be able to really go out in the world, whether it was following nurses in Pakistan, or queer activists in Zimbabwe, or there's so many other, the Women's Pro Tennis Tour in Russia or other places. And it allowed me to explore my fascination with our shared humanity in all of these places, and also to tell stories and to learn from each person that I met. Everyone has a wonderful story that's worthy of being told, I believe. And I gravitate towards the underdogs. I gravitate towards the marginalized communities. And because I feel, ultimately history is written by the victors. So most all except one film have been all about girls and women. And so we as girls and women need to think like victors. We need to think like winners, and we need to not be shy to stand up and have our voices heard in a meaningful way to help affect change in the world. So I gravitate towards stories that I feel are important to be told, that need to be part of our collective history, and to build bridges of understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I hope I answered your question.
No, you absolutely did. I mean, I think it seems that, you've taken a lot of your experience in international studies and in business, very important. I'm sure that helped you out in your career as a filmmaker too, to have some business experience.
True.
But yeah, you can, and I can see that sort of thread through your stories, that your stories are very, you want to tell that other side, the stories that haven't been told. And, and Fanny is definitely one of those stories. I was going to ask you a little bit about your style of filmmaking, if that's okay. I know these are sort of general, but I mean, your style is very, there's a lot of cinema verite going on, in your style of filmmaking. How does that, what attracts you about that style of filmmaking particularly? Like, I know you get behind the camera sometimes, you go in there. Is there something about that style has that been a style that you've been attracted to from the beginning, or did it kind of develop over time? What is it about cinema verite that is kind of for you in your films?
It's an interesting question. I think that even since back when I was younger in high school, taking photos of my family or what was happening, and there was something about documenting life as it's happening, moments that are in a split second will be gone. Mm-hmm. But there's something really sacred and beautiful about that.
Absolutely. The spontaneity of the moment and kind of capturing it as it's happening.
Yeah. And to cherish it, these stories. I mean, part of it perhaps comes from a fact, I mean, my parents were hippies and we moved around a lot, and photos, videos, things are just like lost because, you know, you're moving around so much and you just, so maybe part of it is just that, you know, there's this child that wants to document and make sure that we remember what's happening. That would be maybe my Freudian reasoning. But in terms of just the actual act of cinema verite, when I'm filming, I feel it's really an honor to witness lives unfolding in the moment. And I'm not one of these people that are filmmakers that I'm just a fly on the wall and I disappear into the, you know, to the paint. No, we impact everything that's happening around us. I truly believe, and anyone who says different, I just don't agree with, because we're there, we're with a camera. But what does happen over time, especially when you have patience, a lot of patience, and you listen and you're flexible, you can eventually build trust with the people you're filming with. And the more trust you build with them, the more they feel safe to be themselves.
Well, it's pretty evident in your films, I think, that, you know, that the people that you're talking to, I mean, they're very intimate portraits of people that you know, end up making and presenting in your films. And, you know, how do you kind of build that level of trust with your subjects, you know, that they let you in that way? And, you know, do you spend a lot of time with your subjects? You know, I guess it depends on the film, but it's pretty evident that they are revealing themselves, like they feel comfortable enough to kind of share themselves with you and with the viewer. Is there, what's your secret? I guess you develop a relationship with them, essentially, is what you just said, right?
Well, I really believe it's one word, it's trust. It's as if they trust that you're not trying to take advantage of them, if they trust that you're not trying to manipulate their story in a way for your own gain. I mean, we're manipulating footage. We have to go into an editing room, and when you have often, you know, and the way I film is, you know, over 100 hours of footage, and then you have to whittle that down to an hour and a half for a feature-length documentary. It's maddening. But I always try to keep my finger on the pulse of the humans that have the honor to follow. You know, what and try to really listen and observe. Because in my first film that I shot in Pakistan, you know, I followed a Canadian nurse to Pakistan who was quit her job in palliative care in Calgary. And she happened to be 55 years old. And you know, this is 25 years ago. So I thought, oh, wow, she's in retirement age and she's going to Pakistan. And I just turned 55. So I'm like, oh my God, that feels so young now. I mean, so at the time, I just was in just such awe of her doing this, you know, to move to Pakistan to teach nursing. But the first day of filming, she took the nursing students. It was very surreal. They were going down this water slide in their shalwar kameez, you know, clothing. And I was there with my cameraman, Hanal Belmar, and he's capturing all of this, and they're laughing and having fun. I said, oh, this is just such beautiful footage. It's so much fun. And then that night, you know, the nurse, Grace Stanley, who was the main character, the Canadian who had moved to Pakistan, she calls me and says, Bobbi, I've talked to the nurses and they're all really upset and they don't want to use that footage. And, you know, they're asking if you could please not use that footage in the film. They only realize after they get out of the water, the shalwar kameez is clinging to them. They're just feeling uncomfortable with that. And I called my husband back in Canada, Bobbi Hart, and said, you know, he'd been making films for several more years than I had, and said, what do I do? I mean, this looks so beautiful. And he said, Bobbi, that's not the story. He said, just, you don't need that. There's lots more to film. And so the most important thing, you know, is that he probably used the word trust, is just continue building a relationship with them. And it was really great advice, because that's what I did. I went back the next morning and said, don't worry, I'm not using that footage, and let's just build from here. And then, you know, the film ended up just being very beautiful. And it taught me so much about listening, and also not coming into a film with your preconceived ideas. Like you may come in with ideas about what, like, I want to celebrate Fanny, this rock band, but how I do that is all up for grabs. You know, there's a million ways to treat a film. So I just, in terms of cinema verite, I just try to be very present, you know, present in what's happening. So like if I'm filming by myself, I constantly, if I'm listening to someone who's speaking to me, I have the other ear wide open. I'm listening to what else is going on all around me. And I'm looking away from the camera right now because I'm just as if I'm in a situation, you know, where there could be other characters in the room. And often I'm just with my camera and a directional mic when I'm filming by myself. Not so much on this film with Fanny, but in previous films. But even in Fanny film, I'm with my DOP, who the main DOP, Claire Sanford, you know, we're right there. And if she's filming something, I'm ears of other things that are going on. And we have these kind of little cues, you know, if I pull her shirt kind of one way, it's like something's happening this way, like, please turn your camera this way, or I'll move her hips, you know, kind of just start moving her hips just as a cue for her to, okay, yes, that's lovely, but there's something really important happening over here that we've got to move to film. And so it's really listening out of both ears, what's going on, and your eyes too, because what someone is saying to you, maybe there's just something nonverbal going on in the corner that is so much more revealing about what is going on in their life and in their story at the moment. And so I just try to really tap into that humanity. And as you were saying earlier, it's building trust. Like once you build that trust and they start to feel like, okay, you know, I'm not the type of filmmaker that, you know, I'm not making you feel about Enron, or, you know, I'm an expose of someone who's polluting the earth per se. They're more human stories. They're more, so it's a different approach.
And that kind of leads into my next question, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Your subjects are about a wide range of humans, a wide range of communities, from, you know, classical music, dance, you know, manic depression, you know, rock bands, ballet companies. What have you gathered? You have talked about a shared humanity that kind of connects, like a thread that connects your films. What have you kind of, you know, gathered up as a, you know, throughout your impressive career as a documentary filmmaker from humans? What do you think it makes us human? What are those connections that you have kind of gleaned, you know, throughout your experience as a filmmaker?
I love that question, because that question informs every film that I make. Because I feel that when each film that I make, I'm reaching for those universal threads that connect us, whether it's love, success, failure, family, identity, you know, I think identity and our place in the world, and how we identify with ourselves and identify with others, and celebrating that everyone's unique identity is, I think, the through line through, I think, all of my films. And ultimately, we're all connected. We're all part of this earth. We all have good days, bad days. We all have families. We all have, you know, whether it's a family we're born into or adopted into, or we have friends, we have, you know, aspirations, we have trauma, we have highs and lows. I mean, and now this year with the pandemic, I mean, there's this collective trauma, there's this collective fog that we're all living in that has been so traumatizing for us all in so many ways. And then on the other flip side, there's just such beautiful humanity that comes out of it. You know, in Montreal, and I know in so many places, the rainbows in the window, you know, ça va bien aller, you know, we're going to be okay. And I took on a side project this year that really was dear to my heart, a web series called We're All in This Together. It's a bi-weekly web series that started in December, and it's geared towards connecting with inspiring and supporting isolated senior citizens during the pandemic. So we have a seniors focus group, and we, you know, I meet with them virtually monthly to inform the content. And because my mom used to work in a nursing home, so when I was a kid, and we spent a lot of time there. Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah, I used to go there with her. And
me too.
We're wearing the same shirts,
and we're wearing the same shirts. We have to.
Bobbi Jo.
We're this is meant to be. It's very as my mother-in-law would have said it when she was alive, bashert, meant to be, serendipity.
That's right. Well, you know, that your mom used to work in a nursing home, though. I remember going with my mom there, and it really affected me. So clearly it affected you too.
Deeply. I mean, there are deep memories of just patients that I saw that didn't have families visit them, and I would often gravitate towards them and try to make them laugh. Or, you know, we hid Easter eggs, we would dance with them when there was events. And my mom started as a nurse's aide, which was very, you know, it was a tough job, and worked her way up to activities director. So she would take them on field trips, and we would help often with a lot of the activities she did with them. And I developed such empathy and such respect for these elders. And also just, it was very sad as well, just to see, because so many cultures, you know, even in Montreal, you see these, like a building, you know, family lives on the bottom and grandmother's upstairs, and there's these intergenerational family living environments, which so often in so many places in North America that's not the case. So this web series connected with me to do during the pandemic, because I just felt really so hurt and saddened by what was happening to seniors, you know, especially in residential homes in Quebec and other places as well, and how isolated they are. So I know I digressed there, but it just...
Oh, no. I mean, I was going to ask you, one of my questions later was what you're working on now. So that's, yeah.
But let me circle back. What were you asking again? Because I'm a double Aquarius, so, you know, you know, just have to wrangle me in.
I think I was asking the very simple question of what makes us human, which I think you definitely addressed there with, you know, just talking about, you know, the dreams of people, the dreams people have, love, family, you know, all the different things that connect us, and how in this difficult time in the pandemic, we've seen just the difficulty of that, and how those challenges have kind of in some ways connected us more and inspired you to make this web series. Yeah.
Well done. Very, very nicely encapsulated. Well, you made me think about just also another element that's so important and obvious, that how temporal life is, mm-hmm. You know, that we, and that's something we all share, no matter, you know, how much money you have. At one point, you know, you are going to leave this body and leave this earth and become something else. And that's something that reality is something we all face and that we struggle with, you know, where's our place in the world. And so I'm always looking through that lens of those shared universal aspects of our humanity when it informs my filmmaking. Because whether you're a gay ballet dancer, you know, a boy, an African-American boy, Robert Carter, who's one of the main characters of my last film, Rebels on Point, who was, you know, snuck some pointe shoes into the ballet studio so we could practice dancing on pointe back before nobody was seeing a boy dancing on pointe. And the Ballet Trocadero de Monte Carlo is now just this huge phenomenon and incredibly talented dancers. Just the fact that he was doing that, you know, he had a dream. He had a dream that maybe society hadn't normalized, but I just like to think whatever inspires you, as long as it's not hurting someone else, mm-hmm. in a deep way, that it's valid, it's normal, mm-hmm. you know. Yeah. So I like going into worlds that maybe are a little different and bringing out the humanity, whether it's classical music, this very, I didn't grow up with classical music. I grew up, with hippies and rock and roll. So when I go to a classical concert, I often didn't feel welcome because I didn't know the repertoire. I hadn't grown up with Bach and Stravinsky and etc. But I was curious about it and I wanted to learn more about the music. And so that's the way I approached the film, was trying to imagine myself as an audience member that maybe they do know about classical music, but really they're just watching a young girl, from age 12 to 20, just growing up. And she happened to love classical music. And so humanizing that world that can seem so snobby and unapproachable. It's just other human beings trying to make their way in the world, just like the rest of us.
And that was your film, I'm Not a Rock Star. Yeah, that shot over 8 years, amazing. And yeah, I look forward to watching that one. I haven't seen that one yet. Now, well, let's chat about Fanny the Right to Rock. It rocks. It's amazing. I guess you probably heard that already.
They do rock. It was easy to follow women that really rock.
Yes, they rock. Your film rocks and they rock. Yeah, I so enjoyed your film. Honestly, it was it was beautiful. Amazing women. Yeah, and you talked about your film about the all-male drag ballet company, Trocadero de Monte Carlo. And
yeah, the Ballet Trocadero. Yep.
Yeah. And you said, I watched some interviews with you actually when you were talking a little bit about that film, and you just talked about it a little bit there, that it's sort of, you wanted to celebrate that community. You wanted to draw attention to that community, celebrate that community, and you thought that it should be brought to light, that not enough people knew about this. Was that your experience with Fanny? Can you kind of talk me through a little bit of how you came to wanting to make this film, Fanny?
Sure. Well, I mean, I literally was looking for a guitar for my daughter. At the time she was 12 and had always been into music, did study piano and then wanted to learn acoustic guitar when she was 8. So I was on the Taylor Guitar website and they have this section on the menus, stories. I'm like, ooh, stories. So I click on the little menu icon and, scroll down, and then up comes this beautiful photo of this woman with an electric guitar. She must have been in her early 60s or something, with this flaming gray hair. And I was just like, oh, who is this? And it was June Millington, the lead guitarist of Fanny. And so I just read through the story and my mouth just kept opening wider and wider. I was just in such awe of this all women band, a self-formed band. There were, Asian Americans in the band. There were queer women in the band, but yet nobody knew those elements back in the day. David Bowie was a huge fan of theirs. They toured with all these famous other bands. Anyways, it goes on and on. My mind was blown. And then we're in the age of internet. So I found some of their music or YouTube clips of somebody uploaded archives from different places around the world of different TV performances, etc. And I just was even more blown away. And like every single film, pretty much, well, not every single film, but often, it's also combined with like a frustration when I discover Fanny, because I was frustrated that I didn't know about them. Like I said, my parents were hippies in the 70s in California. That's when Fanny, between 70 and 75, is when they released these 5 critically acclaimed albums. They were self-formed. They wrote their own music. They wrote controversial music. They played their own instruments expertly. They wore bell bottoms and jeans and, shredded, suede jackets, and they just had attitude, and they were owning it, and they just took the stage, and they were so talented. And where the hell was that LP on that, these massive stacks of LPs in my parents' California in the 70s? No idea about them. So I was really mad. And so again, it's, back to that, history is written by the victor. So I'm like, okay, and then I read this quote by David Bowie, revivify Fanny and I will feel my work is done. And that kind of pushed me over, tilt.
You're like,
okay,
I'll do it for you, Bowie.
Okay, David Bowie. Fanny. And I did try to actually interview him because he was still alive when I first discovered Fanny about 5-6 years ago. But it was the last year of his life. And I know he was focused on that last album. And so no matter who I tried to contact, and none of us even knew that he was sick until after he passed away, that he kept it. It was a secret. So I just didn't know why. I was trying to reach out to different people. But I do feel really blessed that I was able to interview his bassist, Gail Ann Dorsey, in the film, and his lead guitarist, Earl Slick. Gail Ann Dorsey was turned on to Fanny by Bowie back in the day. Like Bowie was like, hey, if you listen to Fanny, like, she's like, who? So she says, I felt embarrassed, but of course Bowie knew who was the amazing acts that we should be listening to, or artists that we should be listening to. So that's, how I discovered the band, was through that Teleguitar website. And then I reached out to Alice DeBure, drummer on the Fanny Rocks website, and we were in touch a bit. And then I found June through her Institute for the Musical Arts that she runs with her partner, Anne, in Goshen, Massachusetts. And I was still finishing Rebels on Point, but I was really wanting to do this film. So I stayed in touch with them, and that was the beginning of the process. I mean, there's more to the story if you want to know, but that was how I first discovered them.
Well, I do want to know all about it. And you're right. I mean, like when I first saw, your film, I'd only heard about Fanny. I had heard about them a few years ago. I'm a musician, and I was on the board of Girls Rock NL, which is a branch of, I don't know if you know the Girls Rock camps.
My daughter went to the one in Montreal.
Really? Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I was
love them.
Yeah, it's a great organization, Girls Rock, and we started one up here in Newfoundland about 4 or 5 years ago. And one of the presenters came in and presented something on Fanny, and that was the first time I'd ever heard of the band.
Amazing. I love to hear that.
I mean, they're, the first few shots of them in your film, the footage in your film is just, I mean, they had it all, they were amazing. They were, their fashion, their playing, they're players, right? Like really, really good. You could never dispute their talent, obviously. And I don't know, I know in the film, I think it was Jean who said that, every time they played, they would have to prove that they were really playing. People didn't kind of, the audiences weren't really, I guess, ready for them, or had never seen this model before, this kind of talent from women rocking out like this.
Absolutely.
And of course, men were, I think Sherry Curry said the Runaways, they coveted rock and roll. Rock and roll was only, for them. Why do you think, why weren't Fanny why aren't they a household name at this point? They were such a groundbreaking band. I mean, is that the reason they're not such a household name? I guess because they were the first ones to do it.
It's a question that is asked a lot. The band asked themselves that question. Other fans asked the question. I think Earl Slick, David Bowie's guitarist, in the film, I think he says it the most succinctly. It's always the ones that started that get fucked. Excuse the F word, the F bomb, bleep, but it's true. You just think of the groundbreakers in the world. That's like where the title of the film came. Right there. Fanny, the Right to Rock. I watched the feature documentary with Meryl Streep on the women's suffragist movement. I'm trying to remember the title of the feature film, but to sit there with her and for her to understand that the visceral sacrifices that so many women went through for women to have the right to vote. And it wasn't that long ago that we were earned the right to vote, and we fought for the right to vote. And I mean the women's shoulders that we're standing on. And so I see Fanny the same way, just as women fought for our right to vote that we in some ways take for granted these days. It's kind of a natural progression. It's just you're born with it, and you can take it for granted a bit. So I wanted a title that would remind people that we're standing on, especially, you know, young women musicians and just any woman, girl that would like to be able to use her voice, to not only find her voice, but use it, and not to be afraid to use it loudly. Because often women, even today, you know, shh, honey, calm down. Don't get upset. If a man is like, you know, that's not right, then a man is strong. But if a woman, no, that's not right, like, honey, woo, a little emotional, you know, and so I wanted the poster to normalize a woman being loud and proudly being loud, you know, having that mouth like, wow, like rocking out, you know, and so I want our girls to be the girls coming up, you know, anyone coming up that feels marginalized in society, however you identify, to feel that your unique voice matters, and to not only embrace it, but you deserve to share it and to share it loudly so we all hear it, you know, whether it's, I mean, look at all the movements that happened over the centuries, and including just in the last many years with this Black Lives Matter or Stop Asian Hate or Me Too. And it's just, you have to be, it's, what is it? The squeaky wheel gets the oil. It's just, it is the way it is. You know, you need to, I talked to my daughter about this. You know, if you want to affect change, you need to actually do something, write a letter to your, you know, in the States, we'd say congressman or your MP or the prime minister. You need to be the change, as Gandhi says, that you want to see in the world. And Fanny, as they would say, if you ask them, they said, we just wanted to rock out. We loved music. We wanted to write songs and rock out. Like they were, you know,
I think June said they didn't ask permission. They just fucking did it.
Exactly. They just fucking did it. And so they weren't, you know, I don't think until later that they were like, they were more realized how much part of the zeitgeist of the women's, you know, movement and civil rights. And I mean, it's the record company, you know, as you discover, people will discover in the film, you know, the band was not supposed to talk about the fact that whatever the two bandmates that were queer, you know, not supposed to talk about that, or you could leave the band, you know, thank you very much. And I never found one article in all of the research that I did, and if someone finds one, you know, be happy to be proved wrong, about the fact of the Filipino American heritage of these women. You know, Jean and June, Filipino American sisters, and Brie Darling, who was in the band, you know, the Spelts, and then, well, I don't want to do spoilers of the film story, but she's, you know, also, I mean, the film I follow is, you know, we could talk about the narrative of the film after, but just the fact that there were these Asian American women that were, and think of Asian American, you know, this kind of stereotype of this quiet, docile, you know, you know, the Asian culture. And so to me, that was like a double whammy of, you know, this Asian American women just like rocking it and rocking it loud. I just think they're just such incredible role models for anyone that feels like they want to be accepted for whoever they are, and to realize their dreams and just go after them. As June says in the film, rocking is just a metaphor. You know, when you fall down, you just get back up again. You know, I say that to my daughter all the time is, you know, I used to run hurdles in high school and track and field, and I fell over a lot of hurdles, you know, a lot. And if you don't get back up, you can't learn anything. So when people are afraid of failure, I mean, I think that's the worst thing that you can teach, is like to berate children for failing. I mean, when my daughter, quote, quote, fails or doesn't win a soccer game or doesn't, I just say, hey, did you try your best? You know, what did you learn today? You know, well, apply that to next time, because failure is essential to success. It's not just something that happens occasionally. You cannot succeed unless you fail over and over and over again. And then, as June says in the film, rocking, the metaphor, pick yourself back up and keep going. And that's what Fanny did, no matter how many people slap them around, metaphorically speaking, they kept getting back up. And that itself is a great, they're great role models for that, resilience, determination.
Well, they
don't take no.
Absolutely. I mean, the fact that they came back and made, an album after 45 years, Fanny Walked the Earth. How inspiring is that? I mean, as a woman who, is a mother and who released my first album a few years ago, there it is on vinyl, no less.
And and then back to the 70s. Isn't that just so gorgeous?
Love it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, for a long time, I was like, okay, no, you're not 22 anymore. You can't release your first album. You're not 30. You can't release your first album. Watching Fanny release an album after 45 years, I mean, they're bucking, as you say in the film, bucking ageism, and it's just so inspiring to see that. Like, was that something that was in your mind, sort of, I guess, normalizing women rocking, normalizing women aging and being in a film, being in the limelight, you know what I mean? Was that something that kind of developed?
Absolutely.
As you were, I mean, I really want to go see a live show. Just be amazed to see that. But it really, I mean, there is a lot of ageism in the music community. There's in the music industry, I should say. Do you think it's something that women have to deal with more, or marginalized communities have to deal with more, work harder for?
It's a great question again. I mean, I'm so glad you brought it up, because ageism, I mean, it is a huge ceiling that we're, all women are in the process of smashing as we get older. I'm 55, and you see it in all industries of, more men are aging gracefully, or, women are expected to have a certain, young look. Like, I don't want to be 16 again. I'm happy to be 55. I'm happy to have wrinkles. I don't want to go back. I want to be right where I am and go forward. And
if you want to be a rock band, then you can do that. And
exactly. And that's, yes, exactly. And like the song in the film Lured, which is on the album, that was the single that was first released, that Brie wrote, Lured Away. That's all about, she was watching other people, her husband's music producer, and she was watching other artists recording, and she's like, well, what about me? Like, I'm not I'm not dead yet. Like, what the heck? I've got a lot to offer. So it kind of, that song is about that it's never too late, Yeah. I'm not starving, but I'm kind of hungry. My heart beats. I'm not exactly dying. Kind of living. It's kind of dying.
And I love that sequence, actually.
I can't.
You're cutting back and forth between Jean and them at the award show, which I won't, go into too much detail for spoilers. But that sort of montage, that sort of cutting back and forth there was so powerful and really beautiful. Yeah.
Thank you. Because it is, I mean, even like, for the most part, the reviews for the film, I mean, it's just released at Hot Docs, and we won the Audience Choice Award at Hot Docs.
Yay! Congratulations!
Thank you, everyone who voted. That's
amazing.
So that says so much just about how it's connecting with
I
people.
mean, I cried at the end. I mean, the point where Brie turns to the camera and starts singing, and they're going down I'm not gonna, it was very Thelma and Louise, if you don't know.
No, I love that.
Really affecting, really fabulous, and these women are icons, and I'm so glad that they, I think your film really did them justice, and really,
Thank you. Well, and when you were saying about, you asked me earlier, why didn't we know about Fanny? Why aren't they a household name? I admit that, like, part of the film for me is helping right a wrong in musical history, you know, that Fanny was ahead of their time, you know, and as Kathy Valentine from the Go-Go's says in the film, you know, gives them their kudos, you know, she says, we released 3 albums back then and Fanny released 5 and, you know, and she has so much respect specifically for, you know, she mentions the different artists of Fanny and how much they inspired her. And Todd Rundgren, you know, who produced one of their albums, you know, and still such a, you know, a huge fan of theirs, or Joe Elliott of Def Leppard, or Bonnie Raitt, et cetera, et cetera. And Kate Pearson of the B-52s, and
that all the
so
people are in
all these people, and they just jumped right in. And so it's really interesting that you're actually interviewing me today, because I don't know if you know, today they actually announced the inductees for the 2021 Rock and Roll Hall of Fame today. And 2 of the people that were in the Fanny film talking about Fanny were inducted, are going to be inducted. Todd Rundgren, who's been nominated a few times, he is one of the inductees, and the Go-Go's.
Amazing.
So yes, so and Tina Turner too, yay! And
time.
So yeah, so it's and there's it's to me that's one of. There were so many people that I talked to, you know, all of the different iconic people that you see in the film were almost like unilaterally saying that Fanny should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And so to me, this film it's a celebration of the band, but I really do hope that it helps wake up our, you know, society to what an impactful band they were, and that they still are. They're still around, they're still here, they're still doing amazing things, and that they should be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inducted next year in 2022 or
Absolutely.
2023 at the latest. But like just seeing Todd Rundgren and the Go-Go's today and Tina Turner, it's like, okay, like this is, it's good. I'm so excited for them. And I just, yeah, the time that happened this morning. So it's just, I just believe that, you know, everything happens for a reason, and Fanny should be there next year.
Oh, 100%. And if they're not, I'm writing some strongly worded letters to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
You can start writing them today. Like I encourage people to, you know, like discover the band and to write the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, to you know, there actually are fans that started induct Fanny in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. There's a Facebook page. So if you want to join that page, it exists. And there's lots of people sharing all these amazing like archival posters, things that I didn't come across even while I was filming. So it's actually a really cool group to be part of, because there's so many discoveries that I'm even having being part of that Facebook group.
Yeah. So you're creating, I think your film has sort of started this movement and sort of creating this community of Fanny fans, which is amazing. And did they see the film? Did they love the film?
Yeah. They saw the film. They all really appreciated and really loved the film. So I mean, it's always hard to see yourself on camera, I think, but I received really wonderful, appreciative emails from all of them, that they really appreciated how I approached the story. And they were really understanding about, you know, there's so many people that I interviewed that, you know, couldn't even be in the film, you know, that end up on the cutting room floor. And that's my hardest thing, is when someone spends their time to interview them, and then, you know, you want everyone to be involved. And I learned a long time ago. I mean, there's a really renowned filmmaker in Toronto, Ann Pick, Reel to Reel Productions. And I worked with her for a year when I was younger, and she gave me my first chance to direct like a 2-minute little piece of this TV series she did called Harrowsmith Country Life. So I got to direct a little 2-minute episode on soap making in Vermont. And I just felt so bad. I think about something I had to cut out, and she just said, you know, you have to serve the story. You have to serve the narrative, you know, for the audience. That's your commitment. And so, you know, and Anne is actually one of the executive producers on my film, Ann Pick, and story editor. So she's, you know, I really wanted to give, to underline the importance of mentoring other women, like with it, for us to be helping each other, not competing with each other, but supporting each other, you know, celebrate each other's successes, and help young filmmakers or young people that are trying to get, their way in the industry. I often work, whether it's volunteers or try to find a job for someone that's, wants to break in, and especially young women. I feel it's important that we support each other. So,
absolutely, I agree. And I think, I think what June is doing there in Massachusetts, right, with the Institute
for the Musical Arts, Institute for the Musical Arts,
Well,
no, and that they started years ago. I mean, as Bonnie Raitt says in the film, they were doing girls rock camps way before anyone else was thinking of it. When in Portland, Oregon, when the girls rock camps were starting there, and they're still kind of under the radar. I mean, Bonnie Raitt is on their board, founding board of directors, and it's an incredible, like, it's really high performance. It's like, you don't necessarily have had to play an instrument like most girls rock camps, but it takes things to a whole other levels. They have, learning about recording. They have a full-on professional studio there. They have all these visiting artists from like Charles Neville and, just so many different famed artists that come there and give classes or just, drop by. And so it's a really beautiful organization that is giving back to girls, and just like the girls rock camps, like that you have in Newfoundland or we have in Montreal, and ultimately whether a girl becomes a rock musician or not through those camps, I think the most important element to come out of that is confidence, and to not be afraid to say something, to express yourself,
finding their voices. Absolutely.
Yes,
absolutely. Well, Bobbi Jo, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for chatting with us. I'm really excited about Fanny, and Fanny rocks, and so do you. And I hope to watch the series, the web series that you mentioned eventually. It sounds really, really interesting. So I'll be following you and your career, and
Oh, thank you. It's so sweet. And also, if other people want to know more about Fanny too, there's a Get Behind Fanny podcast that drummer Alice DeBure started that has been going on, and I was in the last episode, and they're bringing out all kinds of different people out of the woodwork about the Fanny history. So it's really fascinating and worth listening to as well. And it's so great meeting you. I'm so honored to be part of this, and I look forward to staying in touch.
Sounds great.
And I want to hear some of your music.
Let's touch base. Okay, I'll send you some.
And I'll share it.
We'll chat.
And I want to support you.
Thank you so much.
It's never too late.
Thank you, Bobbi Jo.